All right, everyone, welcome to our February NCL Coaches Call. We're so excited that you can join us this month, and we hope that January treated you well and that you're looking forward to what we have in store for this Coaches Call. All right, so just as a reminder, my name is Emily Calandranis. I am part of the Cyber Skyline team, and I'm the community engagement manager that really allows us to partake with different opportunities with NCL. And I am here to create a wonderful community amongst the students and the coaches and those that are really creating the opportunities to be a part of the NCL games. I do encourage you that if you haven't reached out and if you have any questions or you'd like to, be a part of anything we have going on within the NCL community, that you reach out to me. My email is emily@cyberskyline.com. And this is my little plug as well to ask you to connect on Slack. So if you're not part of the Coaches Slack channel, I encourage you to be a part of it. You can email me. I can send you an invitation. I usually put updates, we ask questions, and we really encourage everyone to be a part of the Slack channel for every competition season. And this will allow you once again to be privy to all the news that we're sharing, but also to share amongst coaches. So we're going to go ahead and begin. Today's agenda is going to start with reviewing some updates that we shared last time. And then we're going to be going into reviewing some really helpful coach resources. After that, we're going to be introducing TJ O'Connor and hearing about his NCL coach experience. And then certainly we're going to be wrapping up this phone call with an open Q&A. So please feel free to ask any questions throughout the entire webinar. And then we're going to adjourn and look forward to next month's meeting. So just some updates review from our last January meeting. Over the last few weeks, there have been some changes that you may have noticed when you have jumped into the dashboard or the gym. First, we want to let you know that we have renamed the preseason to practice games. Also, the players can now collaborate in the practice game as well. So those two changes have already taken effect. So you'll be able to see when you jump into the gym that these two things are available to you. We've also added YouTube videos for the gym. So you'll be able to have that visual to help you and your students as they get prepared for the games. A couple other reminders, we have some scouting report updates. We now have nice work role alignments that are going to be on every single scouting report, as well as descriptions for each challenge. Lastly, we have updated the leaderboard so students can now see who is in their score range. They do not have to be the top 100 to be able to see themselves on the leaderboard. And we hope that this gives some clarity and visibility into how you did in the games and how your students have done in these games. All right, so now this is going to be the meat on the bones for the conversation for this afternoon. And we're going to have David, the Commissioner of NCL, walk us through some of the coach resources that are going to be most helpful. Certainly, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A box. We will go ahead and answer them as it's appropriate in the timing, or certainly we'll get to you at the end of the webinar. So David, whenever you're ready, go ahead and feel free to take it away. And you also can share your screen if you'd like.
Okay, hopefully you can see my screen now.
It might be just taking a moment. I still see the coach resources slide. And let me actually go ahead and stop sharing and see if that helps.
Okay.
Terrific. There you go.
I think that's working now.
Yes.
How's that? Good?
Looks good.
Great. Give me one more second here. I'm going to stop that 1 sec. Just trying to mute any messages coming in.
Understood.
Let's see. There we go. Hopefully that'll do it. And I will go back. There we go. Okay, so as you can see, we're right here on the National Cyber League site, and I am going to go to resources down to coaches. So that is the place to go, and that's where we have, like Emily said, lots of links for very helpful material. I wanted to spend some time in the NCL Coaches Guide, which is a document if you're If you're new, it's something that we started working on over the last 6 months. So if you are returning, hopefully it looks familiar. And I do want to make the plea that this is a document that is still, it's a living, working document. So I'm definitely asking for assistance from the coaching committee, from the community, to see if you have any ideas of what you can add to, or even, edit in this document. The idea behind this document is kind of maybe self-explanatory based upon the title, but what I'm trying to do is give you some ideas of how to incorporate the NCL into your class. So what does the class curriculum look like to maybe successfully integrate the NCL into your class? And there's lots of different content here, because I've been doing it for a long time, and I've had a few other people that have contributed to this document, have successfully incorporated NCL into their class. So we just wanted to share with the community, maybe some of the challenges we went through, but also some of the solutions and what has worked for us. So a lot of this was based upon first me deciding, okay, I think the NCL is a great addition to the class, primarily because it gives, as everyone here is probably aware, a great place for students to practice cybersecurity skills. So it's kind of, I consider it, the ultimate lab environment. And I almost consider the depth almost infinitely deep in terms of how deep students can jump into these challenges and continue to learn. So I consider my class as like the overview and the kind of the training wheels to get them started, to know how to get started on these challenges. And then the gym and the rest of the NCL is where they're really going to, kind of take those training wheels off and really practice with the skills that I've introduced them to. So that's kind of the benefits section. Obviously we can always point out that, the categories align with a nice framework, CompTIA and all that great stuff. And I feel like students are really kind of starting to get that. They like that once they compete in the NCL, they can get their scouting report and they can see, where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are. And then also they can kind of get a good overview of like, well, this is the part of security I like. And maybe some of the other challenges are the part of cybersecurity that they don't like. They don't have to like it all, but they can then focus on the categories they like and then see how that aligns with an actual career in cybersecurity and kind of pursue that career. So the benefits I think are great. NCL can be incorporated into many different types of classes. One of the ones that I've done is kind of an intro to computer security class. So this is my intro to cybersecurity. I have used it in the network security class, and maybe you can even put it into an intro to networking class. So, NCL can be used in a variety of different types of computer science classes. For the labs, this is something that I have started doing, I think in the last couple years, is that I have actually assigned the gym challenges as labs. And Emily, I'm super happy to hear that there's now videos within the gym, because that really does help. Students, somewhat like reading, but I also think they like watching the videos of how to solve some of these challenges, and having a nice walkthrough is great. So this is actually a lab. So I do assign my students to go into the NCL gym, because it does provide like the great PDF walkthrough and now video. So we can add that to this document for them to learn more about how to then solve some of the challenges in the actual competition. Some pros about the environment of NCL, right? They don't really need to install anything, which is nice. Maybe this is something that Franz can talk about when he gets on, about the Kali instance that could possibly be provided to students, so that they don't even have to run their own Kali instance to work on the NCL. And just if anyone's not familiar with Kali, that's the version of Linux that just basically has a bunch of security tools built into it, and that comes very handy during the NCL. Let me jump down to class schedule. So this is the idea, and this wasn't what I was doing at first. At first, I'd kind of cover all 9 categories, even after NCL started. And I did get some complaints from students of, hey, it would be great if we could kind of front load the class going over all the different categories of NCL before they actually jump in and try to work on the NCL. So this I've done, I've front loaded my classes to cover all the categories, and then they actually start the competition itself. So they at least have some background before starting the NCL. Nice thing about, this is just kind of going over the difficulty rating. So this is kind of just an overview of how the NCL works. And then this is kind of a really important one, grading. So there's a few different options that I wanted to share, one that works for me. So I do assign both the, I was assigning the what we were calling the preseason as part of the grade, but that might change a little bit because they will be able to collaborate on that. But typically what I've done is the individual game. And then also I was doing the team game for some time there too as a required lab. Now, since it's a required lab, you need to figure out how to grade that lab. And at first, what I was doing is I was kind of doing this kind of rolling average. So I would tell the students what the current average score for the whole class was. And I told them if they got the average, then I'd give them basically a B or an 85% on that. What I've learned over time, since I've had my students doing NCL for, I think, almost 10 seasons now, I've learned that there's pretty much a standard average that is seen competition after competition after competition. So for my students, the average is about 1,000 points. And obviously it's going to vary between maybe schools and students, but that's about 1,000 points is the average that my students get, at least on the individual game. So I will tell them before the competition, to get a B on the competition, the individual game, they need to get 1,000 points. And then of course, if they get more, then they get higher. I even give them extra credit if they get way over that, 1,000 point mark. And then of course, if they get under 1,000 points, then they're, the score is adjusted accordingly. So that's my way of doing things, is announcing a score to attain before the actual competition. My students said that kind of reduced the stress because they hated chasing the score as they were competing. So that was kind of stressful for them. And then, I think it gives them something that's pretty attainable as well. So 1,000 points isn't too bad. I know it does require a few hours of work on their part, but that felt like a good amount to do. And then also I give them, I give lots of labs, but this one kind of counts as a double lab just because they work so hard on that lab. There's other options that other people have put in here. Aside a grade based on what you taught in class, right? So for preseason, someone said it's just looking through the challenges in each category and setting a reasonable point target for each. So this is what another someone else in the coaches committee came up with. I thought this one was really interesting, especially if maybe it's a course that students are brand new to computer science and cybersecurity. Someone suggested, and this is something that they've done, is creating a discussion board, and students are graded on how they, how they contribute to the discussion rather than attaining a certain point level. So I kind of like that as well. And then moving on to the team game, what I typically did for the team game was, since I was grading the preseason, the individual game, and the team game, those were all 3 separate labs. I decided that, and that this was also feedback from students, was that was just too much. They said, we can't do 3 games and on top of that do our other classes as well. So what I did was then I made the team game extra credit. And I think I might have to change that now that the preseason, or also known as the practice game, is something that they collaborate on. So I might move that to the extra credit and the team game to required. I haven't decided yet on how to react to the change. And the change of, again, being the preseason, something that students can collaborate on. But I do want to say that I think that's super helpful. I'm a big fan of the preseason as a collaboration, because I also felt like the team game was something that the students probably learned probably kind of the most out of, is because they are able to collaborate and learn from each other. So this was kind of a invaluable thing for them to work on. And I don't know if you guys have the same experience with extra credit, but when I assign something as extra credit, it almost makes it like the students, they want to do it even more. So making it extra credit didn't cut down on the participation. There was actually, I think, about the same amount of participation when I had the team game as extra credit as I did as just a required lab. I think we did have we were going to have people turn in some example syllabi just to see what it looks like in terms of what you might want to write up, include in your syllabus when you are incorporating the NCL into your class. One thing that I just recently did in my syllabus for the NCL was I've altered my cheating policy. So the general cheating policy kind of that we have for computer science, kind of the standard here at my college, is that if students get caught cheating once, they get just a 0 on that assignment. If they get caught cheating twice, then they fail the class. I've raised the stakes a bit for NCL. And one reason for that is I feel like Cyber Skyline does a great job of actually catching people who are cheating, and does a great job of really knowing that, yes, they definitely are cheating. So I've raised the stakes a little bit, and now in my syllabus, I let students know that if they get caught cheating at all on the NCL, that they automatically fail the class. So I didn't really want to raise the stress level for them, but I did want to let them know that, hey, this is, NCL takes cheating very seriously, and that they do a very good job of, catching cheaters, and now also reasonably catching cheaters. So there's not too many false positives there. And I tell them the best way to not cheat on the NCL is just don't talk to anybody while you're competing. So if you're not talking to anybody when you're doing that individual game, then you're more than likely, you're safe. You don't have to stress about getting caught cheating. Rules, that was my rules ethics piece that I think I added to my syllabus. And then another thing that we do here, and maybe it's something else offered at your school, for funding. So part of the students' tuition payment includes a learning fee, at least at my college and all the CSUs. So I don't know if I introduced that I teach at CSU Chico, so Cal State University Chico, and all the other CSUs also have something called a learning fee, which is just automatically included in the student's tuition. So what I do is I've applied to the university to use some of that learning fee money that the students have already paid to pay for the NCL. Since I am incorporating it into the class, I don't make the students pay. We pay, and we use their money they've already paid towards paying for the NCL. So this is from other coaches said charge a lab fee for the course. Maybe another option is have local corporations donate funds for students to compete. The idea here for me is trying to remove some of those boundaries, especially if I'm requiring them to participate in the NCL. I'm requiring them to make a payment, so I'm trying to reduce that burden on them if at all possible. So that was the whole learning fee idea. So that's one other thing that I wanted to show you. I do have this link here for tools covered in a sample class. So this is my sample class that I made. try to make it all fancy. So this is kind of a sample week 1 in my overview of Cali. And I have them do this, which I think is huge, over the wire. It's a great free competition for them to, it's not really a competition. It's they level up as they solve challenges. It's a great introduction to Linux, or a review of some of the Linux built-in utilities like grep and awk and all that great stuff. So that is that. I've got cryptography here and some of the slides that I go over with cryptography and steganography. And in week 2, I cover Hashcat, which is part of Kali and Linux. And I talk about StegHide and this digital invisible ink toolkit. And then for log analysis, which is huge in NCL, I talk about Splunk, and Splunk does have a free trial. So it's not a paid for tool. So they can use a free trial of Splunk to see what that looks like to solve some of the log analysis challenges, or they could just go back to what they learned in over the wire to learn some, use some of the Linux commands. Obviously for network traffic, this is one of the default tools to use, Wireshark. So I cover Wireshark in this week. Forensics and scanning, obviously we do Nmap, and I introduce them to Ghidra. So if this isn't one that you haven't looked at, well, this is great for reverse engineering. This is the week I'm on right now, web application exploitation. Burp Suite is also included in Kali Linux. So I show them how to use that tool, and there's some great tutorials that Portswigger actually has available for Burp Suite, and Burp Suite also has a free part of their tool. There's the community edition and the paid for edition, but they can actually just use the free piece if they need to, and some just more about SQL injection. So this is kind of just a brief overview. I just wanted to give you guys the link of some of the, how I've organized my class and some of the tools that I've covered. But again, I want to emphasize that one thing that I'd like to get out of this coaches group and committee is really more advice and for the rest of the coaches. So that's why I want to keep this as a living working document. So we can all help each other contribute. I know this is a competition, but we're also here to help train the students on cybersecurity, and we're trying to set them up for success. So any ideas that you would like to contribute to this document would be great. The idea is to keep this as a working document for a while in this form, and then maybe we'll prettify it a bit. It's not a word, but I'll make that one up, to make it look a little bit nicer and a little easier to use, rather than just keeping it as a Google Doc. So that's what I wanted to share. Emily, did you want to open it up for any questions, or do we need to move on?
It's probably a good time if anybody has any questions for David. And while you're thinking of your questions, you're putting them in the Q&A box. I also wanted to ask Franz if there's any additional resources that you can think of, looking at all the wonderful things that David shared with us. And once again, everyone, you can throw your questions in the Q&A box, and we will have time later to answer as well. So you didn't miss anything if you don't ask now. But yeah, Franz.
Sure. Thanks, Emily. So I think one thing that showed up on the screen when David was showing the NCL website, there is that button on the right side, the YouTube tutorials. And so we do recordings almost every single week, and we upload them to the YouTube channel once they're done. We have this playlist, and they cover different topics generally in cybersecurity, but there's a section of content in there specifically based on the challenges from the gym. And so this is a good tool if you want to give your students something to look at. If you are needing additional resources to help them learn, this is like hours and hours of content for them to just watch through and learn about different topics, and even have walkthroughs on how to solve challenges. There is also a live equivalent to these. We run these live as webinars every single Thursday. And the URL for that is crowdcast.io/NCL. So if you sign up for an upcoming webinar that will get you added to the mailing list. We have one coming up this Thursday when this loads. So we have one coming up this Thursday about manipulating web cookies. And if you sign up to one of those, you'll be added to the mailing list and you'll find out all about all the other future episodes as well. One thing also that I want to touch on that David was talking about when it comes to the cheating within NCL, just I guess as a quick primer for those of you who are not aware of how the rules of conduct violations work within NCL, once we identify something that appears to be against the rules of conduct, we will reach out to the faculty member of the students that are affected, and we basically will ask for a statement from the students, which will be sent to the faculty member, and then the faculty member will provide us, we'll schedule a call. It would be me, you, and David on the call, and we'd go over effectively what the statement is from the student and what the evidence is on our end, and we'll make a determination on what needs to happen on the NCL side. But as well, if your school and your class have your own academic conduct policies, we will provide a copy of that evidence for you all to kind of do whatever it is you need to do on your end. So we're not here to be prescriptive in terms of how you handle this incident as an academic violation from the school. We'll be here to equip you with the evidence and answer any questions that you have along the way. But that just provides you some context as well, so you understand how that will all work, and if that maybe affects how you might treat rules of conduct violation within your class. That's how the process will happen. And so we try to be as transparent as possible. The one core thing is that we will not directly work with the students in terms of a rules of conduct violation. We need to have a faculty member there to hold the students accountable. So if there is an issue that does occur, we need that faculty member to be the point of contact and hold the student accountable in the case that they give us an inaccurate statement. We need to make sure that they're skin in the game and that they can be held accountable for their actions. So that was just my quick additional add to everything that you provided, David. It doesn't look like I'm not seeing anything in the chat. Emily, am I missing anything?
Nope, no questions yet. That means we're just providing really excellent resources and communication so far. So that's terrific. One quick plug, actually, you all saw on Crowdcast that we also have those NCL 101 happenings that happen every Tuesday. So those are student facing. So if you have students, part of anything that you got going on with them, you can let them know, hey, every Tuesday there is going to be an offering for NCL 101. They're always provided by the Players Committee. So it's a wonderful way for them to get into that community of the NCL Players Committee, but also to be able to just get really helpful information and resources as well. So like I said, I think we're good to go with questions right now. That's fantastic. We are going to have a pause later if anyone has any questions that pop up. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen again. If you would just give me one quick moment, I want to make sure I get it in there. And we're going to go ahead and pop right in here. So now we're going to take this really nice little mosey left turn to our coaches spotlight. So we are excited to be sharing the floor with Dr. TJ O'Connor, who's from Florida State University. He's the assistant professor in the Department of Computer Engineering and Sciences. The most exciting part of everything that we got going on this page is the next part, which is we have the coach of the team that won first place in the 2021 Fall NCL Championship. And although they won last fall, it looks like you can see here that TJ has been a part of the NCL for quite some time. He has coached NCL for 5 seasons and has had 59 students participate in the NCL games, which is really fantastic and just shows his enthusiasm and motivation to have his students be a part of NCL. We're so appreciative of your time, TJ, and I'm actually going to hand the baton to Franz so we can just spotlight a little bit about your experience and share some helpful resources for our fellow coaches.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Yeah. So thanks for the introduction, Emily. And TJ, I'm excited to have you on this call. And I think definitely as the coach from the top team from the fall season, I think there's a lot of insight that you have in terms of what does it take to make a great team. And so I've got a series of questions, and if you've got any other insight that you'd like to add in, please just jump in and share your thoughts. But I kind of want to start with understanding, you've built this great team. What did it take in terms of like the scheduling? Like how frequently was your team practicing, and how did you schedule their preparation for the games?
Yeah, so a little bit about our club. We have a campus-based team that has about 80 students in it now, and it's grown quite a bit. About 40 of them are active competitors, but it's relatively new. It was founded in 2019 by one of the students, and he sought to kind of create a competitive cybersecurity team, and sought NCL as one of the competitions for us to go after. So relatively, we had a great, exciting season, but we haven't been around that long, and so it's kind of, I guess it's good reflection that you can get good fast, and when the students really committed to achieving excellence, it can happen relatively fast. They practice twice a week for about an hour, and that is all student-driven practice. They organize the trainings, they organize the lesson plans, and the seniors in the club really drive the juniors, the freshmen and sophomores that are starting out. It complements a program that we created in the university about 2 years ago, where we have about 6 cybersecurity focused courses that complement a computer science education. And so I guess the short of the question is about 2 times a week they're practicing, and then on order of about the juniors and seniors have about 2 classes a semester that are dedicated to cybersecurity related concepts.
Cool. And is there a lot of overlap between the members of the club and the students who are taking those classes?
There's a good deal of overlap. We have data sets in both students that take our concentration but don't have time to compete because they have work or other requirements, and then we have others students that are outside of our degree plan but complement their education by joining the club to learn about cybersecurity concepts. So it's a good balance. Mm-hmm.
And when they're doing the practice, what resources are they actually using to do that practice?
Yeah, so they use quite a wealth of resources. I've fallen in love with Docker lately. I really like building small Docker images that implement a concept really fast, and then allowing the students to practice on them and make variations of them. Whether it be you're showing them something like SSRF or SQL injection, you can relatively make a Docker container very quickly and demonstrate that concept, and you can find 1,000 examples out on the web to do the same. And I've found that is a really portable way of getting things up and running fast for them to practice very hands-on on a weekly basis. With that, we use a CTFD instance that I push Docker containers to. And the students have their own repository where they can, once they have a Docker container, they can push an image to it. So when the club president decides that they're going to cover a penetration testing that weekend, and they're going to do a network scanning of a target, he can push that image up there, and then students can practice against that image. And it makes for kind of an immediate delivery, hands-on type effect throughout the entire year.
And are those images things that are you kind of exclusively creating them, or do other members of the club also contribute to making those images?
Yeah, so I'll make some. I predominantly make some for the classes, and then students take derivative works of those and put them into the club. So like I have several images that I use for the classes. I have an example like in our introductory class where they have to take a web-based quiz, but the only way of succeeding at the web-based quiz is to do either command injection or SQL injection of the actual image Docker of the actual web application. And so students they particularly like that one. They took it, they made it into their own version that didn't compromise the integrity of the class. But then they bring stuff like that into the club, and they make derivative works of it.
And that sounds like a great way, because now you have basically this repository that persists. A year over year, you can continue using that content. You have new students coming and trying it out for the first time.
Yeah. And then the goal has really been to try and make it as low as possible, so that, that they can't just replay old scripts. The Docker image will, if we're teaching buffer overflows, the Docker image will recompile the binary at a different offset and these types of things. We published a couple papers on kind of the reproducibility aspects of it last year, but
And you mentioned earlier as well that you had basically the upperclassmen kind of help and train the freshmen and the sophomores. How are you able to build a structure so that that continues being sustainable? Like, what happens when the upperclassmen graduate? Is part of your process as well training the underclassmen to be prepared to train the next generation?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we're a very small school, to put it in perspective. I think our undergraduate population is about 3,500 students. In the computer science concentration, there's about 320. In the cybersecurity concentration, we might have on order of 40 students, 40 to 60 students on any given year. So it's a very relatively small program. So keeping talent is kind of important. And I think what we learned early on is talent isn't an individual. Talent is a collection of ideas and people that want to work towards a common goal. And so tapping, I think students get relatively good in the first year or two. That if you spend a year doing CTFs, you will get really good if you dedicate yourself to it. But where they get excellent is when they spend the next year teaching the people below them how to do what they just did. And that for us has been the real kind of boost to make a good grade, is tapping students to be leaders in the club, not just individuals, but going forth and planning trainings. And arguably they get a lot better when they have to explain a concept to an audience that doesn't understand it for the first time. And so their knowledge of it grows substantially as compared to just being able to do it themselves.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it sounds like basically you basically need to build the foundation and the structure to build a self-perpetuating organism here, right? Because you mentioned it's not an individual; it's about figure out how can you build the organization to be so successful. What tools or different strategies have you employed to build that structure to make people successful? You have the CTF platform, CTFD platform. Do you utilize specific communication tools to be effective in getting the group organized?
Yeah, sure. So we predominantly use Discord as a mechanism to collaborate ideas, and then we have an in-person training. But even kind of going into that training, people are asking questions and coming out of that training, and Discord tends to be the best mechanism for communication for all the students. One of the things that we got really going for us well is the level of university support that we get. The club is really has the university provost as a benefactor to the club and huge supporter, and so they support the students that want to compete and travel to compete even, and pay the admission fees for competitions. We recently even had and this kind of recognizing the importance of it, and we had a house developed for the team. So much like a football team or a baseball team would have kind of a sports house on Fraternity Row, we have a cybersecurity house that's dedicated as kind of a safe space for the athletes to go in and train in and practice and have some machines set up ready to go with all the software they need, and have access to that server that has a bunch of repositories as well on it.
So when you say like an athletic house, it's a lab environment, or are they actually like living in the same location?
It's not. They don't live there, but it is an actual like house that university owns a couple of small homes located adjacent to the campus, and we, thanks to the provost's support, he funded building it actually into kind of a cybersecurity house for them. They got machines and places to study and huge screen TVs and projectors and fancy hue lighting and wireless networks galore, and everything is decorated with Raspberry Pis. It's grown into a really exciting space for them and it really recognizes kind of the theme here is that, at Florida Tech, we want to get really good. And if we expect people to kind of get really good, then we have to give them a place to do it. And so that, again, we really benefit from just a wealth of support from the university. And one thing I'd encourage other people to look into, is academic excusals. So on the weekends of the two tournaments, at least for the NCL, we get 40 students to compete. Much like a sports team would go in and request permission for them to travel to a competition and get excusal from their classes. We do the same thing on that Friday and Monday for students to be excused from their academic requirements for that Friday and Monday, pending that they are in good standing in the university and they have to make up the requirements as well. But that way they're not forced to be competing with other assignments when they're locked into an actual competition.
Yeah, that's it's amazing that you're able to get that done. I always see the biggest challenge that students encounter is the fact, oh, well, I've got another project or a paper that is due the weekend right after NCL, and so they have a challenge of competing priorities. And I've also seen a lot of the military academies are doing the same thing. And ROTC programs as well, where they're giving students kind of a absence from those duties to participate in NCL, then make those up after NCL has ended. So it's amazing that you'd be able to get that done. In terms of the actual strategy during the game, have the students developed some sort of specific structure or procedure that makes them more effective at answering the questions? One of the big components when it gets very competitive at the top of the leaderboard is accuracy. So I'm wondering if the team has done anything to hone in on their ability to make the most accurate submissions as a group.
So, largely when they go to compete, I don't see them. My wife and I will sometimes take some of the teams out for dinner one night, if kind of we get an indicator that the student might be particularly stressed and need a break. We'll go and take them to a local restaurant for dinner, but like as a team. But I don't get to see what they do during the competition. And so I get some hints afterwards of what the strategy was. Certainly, accuracy wins the competition, as we learned when we came. We've learned a couple of years the hard way, and we've learned this year the positive way. The accuracy wins. I think the way to approach it really is to make sure you have confidence in your answer, and to make sure that and so they do a series of checks from what I understand to make sure that the answer they put forward is not just the answer of one student, but is collaborated upon between multiple students. And to be fair, I think they stole that strategy from John Halley and the Sands team, who are very effective at having a very high accuracy for many seasons now.
It's a common strategy that we've seen across the board. I know the Hawaii team a couple of years back, they basically treated it like a democratic voting process where everyone would solve the challenge independently, and then they'd get together and they'd vote on what they thought the answer was. And then if they couldn't come to a consensus, then then they have like a different task force set out to figure out, okay, how do we actually get to the right answer? So yeah, it's interesting to see that's across the board that those common strategies kind of apply.
I'm not going to get it right, so please forgive me if I do get it wrong, and someone corrects me later. But I believe what our students do is they go into separate rooms and they each solve the problem. And not only do they have to get the same solution, but they have to get it a different way than the other person who got it. And so unless it's something that's relatively straightforward, like a flag that's obvious, or something where the answer is somewhat ambiguous, they have to demonstrate that they got to the same solution using different approaches. And if they don't, then they send a third person to go figure it out, and hopefully they get it. And if not, then they come back and they do some voting strategy on it, like you described.
And in the team game, do you send one team or do you send multiple teams?
So last year, I think we had 4 teams compete. And those teams ranged from the team that was a really team that had a couple attempts under their belt. I think they had placed 3rd in the previous year, and then they graduated one student, to one team that was relatively new and was just starting out. And then we actually had a 4th, and then the 2nd place team did extremely well too. I think they placed in the top 20 or something like that. the third place team was relatively new, and then the fourth place team was a couple of ours, and then we actually partnered with a couple other universities to kind of make like a collection of efforts. And you know, I think the NCL has been really good for that, reaching out and meeting other people. I see John Halley just pinged me in the chat, and I can't say enough about kind of the collaboration between some of the programs. John runs a great program, and most of the students in the SANS Technology Institute are working professionals that have careers, that are going back to get a degree. And so when we won last year, his whole team took third, if I believe correctly. They were right on our heels, and then accuracy, I think they ended up with third. Their entire team reached out and made career opportunities available for the graduating seniors on our team. And so particularly one of our students looks like he's headed to a Fortune 100, thanks to one of the team members on his team, to John's team. And so just kind of having that collaboration between us and other programs has been phenomenal. And you know, so our fourth place team, I think, was not eligible for the competition because it included some of our team players and some team players from other teams, but it built some great bonds and friends along the way.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, I think the big component here is eventually these students want to graduate and they want to go get a job. And so it's great to hear that, you know, these connections that you established during the competition are helping to facilitate those opportunities for those students. With the composition of those teams, was that something where did you kind of help organize the structure of those teams, or those students kind of self-organize how they wanted to be set up?
It was merit based on the individual game. So the
Mhm.
top 7 finishers, or the top 6 finishers, went to the first team. The next 6 went to the next team,
Mhm.
and down so on the order.
Okay, so then you ended up with like the team of the beginners. How did you, because I know this is a big debate of whether like you should have mixed teams to people who are more advanced and people who are more novice, versus like should you just have the fully advanced team and the fully novice team? How were you working to transfer knowledge to those beginner students when they were on that team by themselves? Is that something where you kind of did it post game?
Yeah, so there's kind of a post-mortem thing where we all get together and share a bunch of stories and laugh about it and have good spirits, you know, seeing what we missed. I think a couple of years ago, our second place team, and you had absolutely destroyed all the web challenges, but our first place team that was really, or team that was trying to go for first place, and it was very close, they missed one web challenge and they couldn't get it. And then, you know, finding out that the second place team had it was incredibly frustrating. And so, you know, it's always kind of funny when they all get together and they start sharing, you know, the stories of how they would have figured it out. So it's all done post-mortem. I think the students may, you know, and the organization is largely done by the students. I think they may rotate one kind of leader of the club. We deputize people in different leadership positions down to each one of the 4 teams, and kind of to see what their leadership potential is to organize and run a team in competition. We have a series of competitions we do, and so there's many opportunities during the season. And when we go to kind of travel competitions, that what you described is always our strategy. We always bring, you know, some people there to really compete and represent the university with distinction. And we always make sure that there's kind of one new person that is, you know, just starting their learning curve alongside of them, so that they can kind of see the vision a couple of years down the road. So when they're in their shoes, they understand what right looks like.
Are you actually doing anything actively to train for leadership within the club, or is that something where you were able, you know, through this process, you have natural leaders kind of appearing and they just know what to do when they get to that position after seeing it in practice for several years?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I spent 20 years in the military, 4 different assignments in the special forces. We build leaders here.
All right. Any advice that you would share to the group in terms of how do you build great leaders for teams?
We really had the benefit, and I'd love to say it's my responsibility, but we really had the benefit of our first team captain happened to be a paratrooper, and actually happened to be a paratrooper assigned to the special forces. We have kind of all small worlds. We were both assigned out in Colorado together. And he built our club, and he had a sense of humility about him that has carried the program. He was the best on the team. He could, he would, I think the first time we did the NCL, I think he scored like 75% of the challenges himself, and everyone else, it was collective. But he never acted arrogant about it, and he never acted brash about it. He always treated people with respect and dignity. And that has been one of the things that's been the hallmark of our club kind of going forward, is the attitude that Josh Connolly, the student that founded that, has really taken hold. We're on our second team captain, and he has largely mimicked the leadership style of Josh because it was so effective. And then we've got some kind of deputy leaders alongside that do the same thing and follow that same leadership style. So treating people with respect and dignity, kind of recognizing that everyone is at one point on the journey, and there's no shame in being the start of your journey, or there's really no braggart reason for saying you're at the end of your journey, or it's just, it's a hallmark of our program. And I think that's what helps bring in a lot of new students. I go and I make an appeal to all the freshman classes, and I explain that, if they join the team, not to feel bad that they don't know anything, that it actually helps the team better, because I'm trying to build leaders on the team, and leaders need people to sign up and grow and learn. And so, the fact that they know nothing's okay. And I think that appeal to reason to the freshmen brings a lot of new freshmen into the program, because they're not afraid of being judged for what they do or don't know. And I think that is something that we really strive. You can get kind of a very bro-centric mentality going in cybersecurity clubs, where you try to push out outsiders or people that don't know enough. And I'm very keen to that, and kind of make sure that, if it does happen, that it kind of gets called on the spot immediately, and remind people that, the best on our team are always trying to build up the new people.
Well, I appreciate your insights. I'm all out of questions, but I'll open it up if anyone in the chat here has any additional questions you'd like to ask TJ. I would I don't want to take up all of the spots if people have some questions they'd like to ask. While I put that last call out there, TJ, is there any other kind of advice or any thoughts that you would share that you think would be helpful for the group in terms of how to build great teams?
I think the one of the things is and coming from a much different space 20 years ago, I've been doing cybersecurity since I was a cadet at the military academy in 1995. I don't think students get the recognition they deserve for how hard they have to work to become this good. And so, I would say, my challenge to my fellow colleagues would be to fight as hard as possible to get them recognition. Because what they're doing is really, really important. So you have the photo up there on your screen. I think that's Senator Scott's staff came down and awarded letters to the entire team. And so the man standing with them is the local director for Senator Scott, and he personally hand carried the letters down, congratulating the team on their victory. But even before they won, I made sure that the team was recognized by my peers in the faculty, by the university leadership, by local companies, by local leaders. We really fight to make sure that they get the respect and dignity they deserve for becoming good at something that very few people are good at. And so I think that's one of the key things is the constant praise of them for their hard work.
Well, I commend you for your efforts in building a great team. It sounds like you're fostering a great culture there to build a sustaining and strong team for years to come. I know that's one of the biggest challenges operating in the higher education space, is the fact that you constantly have people coming and going, and so building something that's lasting, something that continues perpetuating even after students leave is challenging. It's hard to continue getting the new people on board and rolling with the tide as students graduate. All right, I don't see any questions in the chat. Am I missing anything?
No, none yet. And I apologize. My computer keeps wanting to go to the Q&A side, but I think it's probably now it's finally time for it to do it. But no questions so far. And of course, as everyone knows on this call, the questions and the answers don't need to just be on these phone calls. If you have any questions at all, we encourage you to use that Slack channel. My email address is emily@cyberskyline.com. You can certainly reach out, of course, through any of the tickets through the coach dashboard. So we're here to help you. We are happy to be able to answer any questions you have. Before we continue on, I also want to thank TJ. Thank you so much for your time and just your insightful comments and your recommendations and just your enthusiasm about your team and about growing the cybersecurity, within each school is so important, and you really demonstrated that. So thank you so much for your time. I can only imagine how impactful it is for your colleagues, but truly, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thanks a lot for setting this up, and we look forward to competing every year, so we really appreciate it.
Oh, that's wonderful. We're excited to see how you do this season as well. All righty, so before we head out, there's a couple of reminders I want to make sure that everyone is aware of. Our next meeting is going to happen just right after this time. So the practice game is going to begin on March 28th. So mark your calendars, get excited, get ready. Remember, the practice game is optional. And of course, we definitely recommend that students participate. They also can collaborate for the practice games, as we heard on this phone call. These are both things that we find to be quite imperative to allow the collaboration to take place across all the different games for the NCL. Another thing I want to share very quickly as a reminder is I am going to be sharing some more content and information on that Slack channel. That's our most direct way to get to everybody. So look out for some new things, especially this week, and as we have some new and exciting updates to share, which really are going to be great resources for your students. We certainly want to make sure you have the resources you need as a coach, but ultimately we're all here to ensure a successful implementation of NCL and really encouraging your students to take part in different ways and allowing open avenues for them to do so. So once again, look at your Slack channel and let us know what we can do to help make your experience better. So we are excited to see you all next month. We are going to be switching up a little bit. The next meeting will be on Wednesday, March 30th. At 6:00 p.m. Eastern time. And we certainly will be sending out reminders for that, and you'll be able to register and hop in. Once again, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, Franz. Thank you so much, Commissioner Zaitchik, for being with us this evening. And we wish everyone a wonderful rest of your afternoon.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.